Hello and welcome back to the Rise and Thrive Revolution. I am so excited today because I have got my first guest. And not only, she's not just a guest, she's one of our soul sisters. We met last year in a business mentorship mastermind and I just love her to bits. So yeah, today we've got Ju. She is a self-love queen, a podcaster, a mother of one who helps bring women back to their innate power and find confidence and wake them up to their fuck yeah energy. And you can do what you want. She works with the feminine archetypes with mindset work and nervous system regulation. And she is all about bringing back that power of you owning who you are and owning your individuality. And yeah, just love her. And I know that you guys are going to love her too. So, hi, Ju.
Oh, that honestly made me teary. I was like, no, stop being so kind.
You did me when I was thinking about it, like how the universe has brought us together.
If people are tuning in, it's just me going, oh, thank you so much. But no, thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to be here, and it is always a pleasure to share space with you. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course, well, you are so welcome. I've been excited to have you on as my first guest. So yeah. So today we're going to be talking about, we're probably going to go down many different paths, guys, to be honest. The conversation will flow from different aspects, but we're definitely going to be covering like the female empowerment side. And yeah, I'd love for you to just share a little bit of your backstory, how you've come to being a coach like you are now. Yeah, just a little bit of your bits of your history that we all need to know about.
Sure. So I guess keeping it relevant to what we're talking about today, I've always felt different. So I was that kid that genuinely thought that there was like a portal to another world and I was going to discover like where I really was from. And yeah, I struggled though to kind of just be different. So I was bullied in both primary school and secondary school. And I think anybody that's been through that experience, you then have such a strong need to then just fit in because you've been singled out for just being yourself. And so I spent pretty much all of my teens and all of my 20s trying to fit in, trying to be the right version of myself, which I thought was being like the corporate achiever, being like the like the typical bitch. The Devil Wears Prada comes to mind. Like that I wanted to be that kind of woman. But I was really successful on a professional level, but on a personal level, my life was just an absolute fucking mess. So I had an eating disorder from the age of 12. I was in and out of toxic situationship after situationship. I abused drugs and alcohol for fun. And I didn't really know who I was in the end. And then 2020 was, I think, such a pivotal year for so many of us, right? And in COVID, that's when I, weirdly enough, started to find the permission to kind of just start not following the crowd and doing what I wanted and doing what made sense to me, even if people didn't understand it. So while the world was in a bit of a frenzy, I kind of was just ignoring that, doing what I was doing. And eventually it got to the point where I had like this almighty breakdown. I'd fallen out of a friend and I honestly felt at the point that I was ready to give up. But instead of giving up, that's when I really just started this journey of healing and finding myself. And honestly, life's just been getting better and better since. And now it's my life's mission to help other women overcome their struggles and just be in their fuck yeah, I can do what I want energy.
And I know that you are going to have a massive impact and change so many lives of so many women, including your baby girl, of course, of guiding her along the way of this. You can be whoever the fuck you want. So yeah, and it's interesting, I think I know we've shared before that our stories are quite similar. With 2020 been like the big smack in the face, kind of like wake up kind of time. But is there like a moment that was, really pivotal for you? Was there something you heard, something you experienced that was like, okay, like this, I don't need to follow the path of what everyone else is doing. I get to walk my own. Is there, or anyone of particular influence in your life that that led you that way?
Yeah, so in terms of influence, like my mum, people always ask me, like clients ask me, friends ask me, like, how are you so just, I do whatever the fuck I want? And it's from my mum. My mum's always instilled, now she's an Aries, so if you know anything about astrology, right, like Aries energy is very much like fiery. You lead
Yeah.
yourself, you do what you want. And my mum has always like really instilled that as a good character trait to have. And then personal experience, I think a really big turning point for me was when COVID was becoming a thing, because I, at the time that it was all sort of kicking off, was on a media detox, so a 30-day detox. So that was social media, news. I mean, I never didn't really watch the news anyways, but from the news, any sort of TV, any sort of media, I was not a part of. So it was just like 30 days to kind of reset, get myself in a good frame of mind, because I was kind of in that addictive, like doom scrolling constantly on my phone. Anyways, like all of my friends were like, "Oh my god, the world is ending. There's this virus and it's killing people, and the world's going crazy." And I was like, "Okay, what?" And they were like, "Yeah, it's all over the news." But I was just looking out of the window, going, "Can't really see what you're talking about." Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense what you're talking about. Like, if we're going on what we can actually see. So I was using my own reality as opposed to anybody else's opinion or any other facts or pretend facts that people were giving out. I was just looking out of the window, and life was pretty much the same until the very point that we all got locked down. So I couldn't understand where that came from when I'm looking out at the world and I'm like, I'm not really seeing this thing that everybody's saying is happening. And then it just, for me, was like, just do what you want. Just trust your intuition, like trust your gut. And I remember having conversations with friends about getting the jab, and I was like, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm not doing it. And my friends thought I was crazy. They thought I was like, they thought I'd lost the fucking plot. And they were like, "But what if you can't travel ever again?" I'm like, "Well, tough. I'm not going to jeopardize my health. I'm not going to do something because everybody else is telling me to do it if I genuinely don't believe in it." So I think that just further cemented that energy of like, you don't need everybody else to understand why you're doing what you're doing. You just need to trust why you're doing what you're doing. And your values actually need to be more important than somebody convincing you. And I think seeing a lot of my friends being able to be bought, like they didn't agree with it, they didn't understand it, but because it meant they could go on holiday, they were ready to compromise their values and what they believed in and their common sense. And I was genuinely surprised at how easily people could be bought. And I don't think that just applies to COVID. I think genuinely in life, if your values aren't what you make your decisions on, that is when you lose yourself. That is when you end up following the crowd. And actually, that's when you end up feeling things like guilt or shame or embarrassment, because you then have to live with the decisions that you've made and you know that you don't align with them, but you're doing it for the sake of everybody else.
Yeah. You know, when I'd like, so I kind of did my Reiki like 2017. So I'd say that was like my sort of start of my spiritual path. I was meditating, I was trying to tune into my intuition and like listen to my guides and stuff. And I used to watch the news, you know, I was really kind of into all like paying attention to whatever the politics was going on. And then when 2020 happened, for me, I think it was about us like being switched off from our intuition. And like I always say, and as you do to your clients as well, like your intuition doesn't lie. Like something in you, inside you, knows what's true and knows what's false. Whether that is something that you want to eat, whether it's gone off or not, you kind of know before you've eaten it. You know, like most people when they get food poisoning, they like kind of know like the food tasted all right, but something in my mind, I just knew I was going to get food poisoning, because it's your intuition's always talking to you, but we're taught to like switch off. And I think like that was a big thing with 2020. Like so many people, we were like basically told to switch off from your intuition. And for me, I remember seeing pictures on social media of the protests that have been happening in London. And there was a sign, and there was a woman holding a sign up, and it said, "You know something's not right, just listen to your soul." And there were like loads of people with similar signs like that, like literally saying like, if this is real, if this is right, if everything that's happening is okay, why is your body on a cellular level rejecting it? And I know like we're obviously talking about like 2020 right now, and there's like many different opinions with what went on, and everyone has to tune in. But I'm like, but what was your soul telling you when you were making these decisions, when you were watching the news, when you were going, oh my God, that's absolute bullshit. Like, why can I only go out with 4 people? Why can't I go out with 5 or whatever the goddamn rule was? And it was like, that was your intuition. And yeah, like listening to it, I guess, is what I was saying, is where do you think, like, have you got a moment of when you first like remember your intuition talking to you? It might be from childhood, or like when was your intuition first really talking?
So I kind of have always, and again, I have my mum to thank for this. Like, my mum always told me, like, listen to your gut, listen to your gut, listen to your gut. That she's always been so adamant about that. So she's always encouraged that in me. So I've always been able to, and it's always actually been really easy for me to hear my gut and to feel that. But I think even if you can hear your intuition, I think the difference between somebody following their intuition, somebody not following their intuition, when they can both hear it, I think is your values and your principles. And I think this is where we can either follow the crowd or abandon ourselves, or we can decide to do what feels right for us and follow our intuition. And I think giving yourself the permission slip comes from your values and your principles. So, for example, we'll use COVID as like the example, seeing as we've spoken about it already. My intuition was telling me this isn't right. Don't do it. Don't trust it. But I could have easily ignored that because of what everybody else was doing. The reason that I didn't is because one of my core values in life is freedom, like being free to think, being free to do what you want, being free to challenge stuff, being free to ask questions, just being free to live however you want to live. Like, for me, that is a core value. So whenever I make decisions in life, a lot of the time it is thinking about the freedom aspect. So because that was my core value and one of my core principles, I was able to then follow my intuition because I was being asked to give up my freedom, and that didn't align with me. So it cemented the message that I was getting. Whereas if you have rocky principles, if you don't really have values, like if you don't really know who you are or what you stand for, when you're then put in situations like that, even if your gut is telling you this isn't good, don't trust it, don't do it, you haven't got your own sort of inner compass to then be like, yeah, okay, like this is what feels aligned for me, this doesn't feel aligned for me. And that is when you do end up just doing what everybody else does. And I think also just being brave enough to be different, to have people question what you're doing. Like, I think so many people are scared of being misunderstood that it stops them from just doing whatever the fuck they want, because it's like, oh, what are people going to think? How am I going to answer those questions? And I think that is what stops so many of us from just living our truth.
Yeah. And I think you can tie that into so many aspects of life. Like, you know, when I say to women when they go to the doctors and they're like, maybe they're going to the doctors and they're not getting answers or whatever, they feel like they're getting pushed away. Like, what do you think it is? Like, what does your body tell you? Does your body tell you that you need this medication? Does your body tell you it's this? Because actually, like, when you tune in, we normally know, but we're so conditioned to like not switching off. And it's like you said about having like freedom being a value is something that's so important for everyone, because actually then you've got the freedom and if you've got freedom and you've got the belief that it's okay to be on the path that you want to be on, then why is it not, then it would be okay to say to the doctor, hey, I think it's this. Yes, you're not a doctor, you may not be a doctor, but your intuition doesn't lie. And I think I saw something on Instagram the other day, and I think you saw it as well, where was a woman giving a speech in America, and she says, we didn't sign up to co-parent with the government. And that just rang true for me. I know I don't have children myself, but I was like, yeah, like, why? Sometimes I feel like I am being told what to do with my health and how to manage my life, when I get to have the freedom to manage it how I want. I don't have to follow the path of whatever's been kind of like, written out there and or posted out there or however it is. So yeah, that was I've lost my train of thought now as well. I can't remember what I was saying.
Yeah, but I think that's the important thing though. And I think that is where people need support, is being able to see stuff that does align with what they really feel, and then giving themselves the permission to actually go with that, especially when it's not what everybody else is doing. And I think if you've been in situations where you have been an outsider, when you have been separated from the group, like, we are still very much primitive beings. Like, our human nature, we're still primitive, right? So we are always going to have that primal desire to be part of a group. So it can definitely feel like life or death when we're not part of the group or we're not following the crowd. But I think finding your way to move through that and then be like, I am going to find my own crowd though. Like, there isn't just one crowd. And I think that's where we go wrong a lot of the time. We do have a desire and a need to be part of a crowd and part of a group. Community is very important, but there isn't just fucking one community. As much as people will have you believe that there is, like when you go online, and especially if you watch the news and shit like that, they will try and convince you that there's only one way to live and there's only one crown to follow, and it doesn't work like that. The more you step into being yourself and give yourself permission to be who you are, which I think comes with being really honest about who you are, like faults and all. Like, if anyone's listening to this thinking, well, how do I be so confident in myself that I want to, because I want to do what I want and I want to give myself that permission. Well, first you have to just get really fucking honest with who you are, like warts and all. Like, I'm talking about all of it, okay? It wasn't until I'm like, shit, yeah, I have an eating disorder. Yeah, I do struggle with this. This is my weak spot, that I could actually embrace who I was and be like, right, okay, this is all of me. So if you're wondering how to do that, you just have to meet yourself first and foremost, like in your entirety. And then you just have to really convince yourself and allow yourself to believe that there is more than one crowd. There is more than one way of doing it. And it's so funny because people that are in specific communities and specific lifestyles are so surprised when they kind of interact with other ones. Like, if I use my dad, for example, my dad doesn't really know anyone that's not really like him. So he's from South London, working class, Irish family. He's been a scaffolder for pretty much most of his life. He now works in film sets, but it's still pretty much, he's always just socialized with people from the same background, same area, same values, principles. So that's all he knows. Whereas then he'll meet people from other backgrounds that have different stories from different communities, and he's like, wow. Or he'll see stuff on TV and then he'll meet someone like that in real life and he's like, is that what it's really like? Like, you just don't know until you start exploring, and there is so much more than what we know growing up.
Yeah. So I remember kind of back, this is going to be a question for you to kind of answer. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, but
Go for it.
I remember when I first kind of started reading things like what you've just said, like, remember who you are, like, know who you are and all this. And I used to think, I didn't know, and I didn't understand even that, like, you know who you are. And I used to think, well, I'm Victoria, that's who I am. And I didn't understand what it meant by who I am, because that's what, so how would, if someone came to you with that kind of thing of like, what is she on about? Like, I'm so-and-so, this is who I am. How can you help, unpick that or explain to them in a way that they can understand this is really who they are? I mean, you touched on it in your last question, so.
Oh, great question. Great question, V.
You
Love
can coach
this.
me through it.
I love this. And you know what? Thank you for asking me to do it so simply, because I think a lot of us think there's this big secret like thing that you have to do. Like, we all see people online and think, oh, there must be some secret special way of doing something. I think if you want to just get to know who you really are, if you're just be curious and ask yourself really basic questions. Like, if you're honestly starting out and you're like, who am I actually? And literally start off just asking yourself, what do I like? What do I not like? What am I scared of? What makes me happy? Those are really simple questions that you can just sit and ask yourself, and it will tell you so much about yourself. But the tricky part in answering those questions is being honest. That's the difficult part, right? So what do I like? Oh, I like this. The tricky part with that question, for example, is maybe you've convinced yourself that things are never going to work out for you. So you struggle to even connect to the things that you like because you're like, well, they're never going to happen for me. For example, I used to believe that I was always going to be single because I didn't think anyone was going to love me. And so I wouldn't really allow myself to dream about the happy relationship because I So that's the tricky part of, well, what do I like? The tricky part with what do I struggle with is being really honest about your weak points. Like, we all have weak points. And I remember writing a list when I was really kind of delving deep, and it was like, I struggle when people are upset with me, and I always want to pacify the situation. I struggle not being the best at stuff, because who am I if I'm not being the best? Like, it's always been important to me to be the best at stuff. It's getting really honest on that kind of level. So it's not like, oh, I don't like when someone gives me a dirty look when I'm walking down the street. No one fucking likes that.
Yeah,
It's like the real,
I
what?
love
Yeah, just,
basic. Yeah.
yeah, really basic.
Yeah, I love that. That's just so great. I know that will really help some of the listeners as well. Is like, just take it back to the basics. Like, what do you like? Do you like going to the pub? Or have you just like learned that you like going to the pub because that's how
Yeah.
it helps you fit into the crowd? Like,
Mm.
actually, I say to like some of my clients when they come to me is, you know, actually spending time on your own, like, is the most amazing thing. And I think as society, you know, we've got mobile phones, we've got constant distractions, we've got constant entertainment available to us, isn't healthy. And actually, sometimes you need to be bored, because if you are bored, there's a problem. You know, like, you're only bored when you're used to getting distracted. After a bit, it's not boredom, it's you just sitting, being and breathing and being you, and maybe thinking about things or whatever you want to think.
Yeah.
And it's not until those moments of solitude you can actually really remember who the fuck you are.
Yeah.
Remember what it is you like. If I know we keep bringing up 2020, but it was just so pivotal. Like, it wasn't until 2020 I actually remembered that I love reading. Like, I'd stopped reading books. And like, since 2020, I mean, I think I read 20 books in 2020. I think I read 23 in 2022, 22, and I'm trying to read 24 this year. Like, I love reading books. And it wasn't until I got that moment of like, okay, I'm not working, there's nothing to do, I don't want to watch Tiger King anymore, which was funny though.
Yeah, that was a great show.
I actually, and then I realized as well that I've got like I'm really good with flower arrangements. Like, I don't know where it comes from. I'm just really good at getting creative with like dried flowers and made all these things. And it isn't until we slow down and step away. And I think that's where stepping off the path is, because at the moment we think, oh, the weekends, you need to get up, you go for brunch, you go out with your mates, you know, like there's kind of like a path that's written to us. When actually it's okay to kind of step back and be, and like you said, like asking yourself those simple questions. What do I like? Like, what makes me feel good? What doesn't make me feel good? You know, even as down as far as like, I prefer having a bath to a shower, or I prefer the beach to the countryside. You know, all these simple questions will really help people unpick who they are. And yeah, let's talk about how to be, or what you would do to help someone be empowered in who they are. So they've discovered who they are. They've realized that maybe they don't want to go to the pub anymore. They want to do opposite things to their friends. So yeah, how does someone get brave to be, okay, I'm going to go and spend the weekend in the woods instead of in the pub or whatever?
So again, a fabulous question, V. Thank you. So again, there's not like this secret thing. It's not like, I always say to people, especially clients, start small. So when we talk about kind of doing something different, right? There's so much happening internally, not just like in your brain, but I'm talking about like chemically. There are so many chemical reactions happening in your body. There's so much happening in your nervous system that when you try and become something different or someone different, alarm bells kind of start going off inside, right? And then we lose that feeling of safety and stability, and we kind of end up in like this, a bit of a frenzy, a bit of a panic, a bit of this unknown discomfort, right? And naturally, when we're in that energy, we want to come straight back into safety. So this is why we see a lot of people try to do new things and then they don't do it. So like, maybe they've booked like a dance class because they love dancing as a kid, but they're so scared to actually go and show up that they cancel it and never do it again. This is because you're trying something a little bit too big that your body can't catch up with and that your mind can't catch up with. So if there is something that you've realized that you actually love, that you've maybe disconnected from, start small. give yourself time to catch up with this new identity. Like you can't go from being somebody who follows the crowd all the time and doesn't really know who you are to somebody that stands in their power, is a lone wolf and does whatever the fuck they want in a day, because your mind, your behavior, your body is not going to feel safe in that transition and is going to do everything in its power to stop it. So what's one thing that feels really, really manageable in like moving forward? So let's use the dance class, for example. Maybe the first step for the first week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks is just looking at different classes, seeing what's available, and then doing that. When that then feels manageable, then do the next step, which is picking the one that you want to go to. When that feels manageable, then you book onto it. Like it has to be like these small, consistent steps rather than like this one huge leap. Sometimes the leap does work for people, but from experience, you just have to kind of take it one step at a time. And then gradually, that thing of, I want to be that kind of woman who doesn't give a fuck and does whatever she wants, you've become that person. But instead of thinking about it and focusing so hard on that end goal, you're just focusing on the steps that are going to get you there. And you don't need to have them all laid out in front of you. You just need to know what the next one is. And I think that's where people trip themselves up, is like, okay, it's like 100 steps away, and before I take step one, I need to know what all 100 steps are. No, you just need to know what step one is. And when you're on step one and you've done that, you just need to know what step two is. You don't need to know what all the other ones are. Like action is the most important thing, but making it manageable.
That's actually one of the Reiki principles. So I don't know if you know, I'm a Reiki master, by the way. And yeah, one of the Reiki principles is just for today. So I use this analogy with like girls that come to the gym. So like if they're wanting to start exercising or they're starting to change their diet, I'm like, just for today, eat a healthy meal. Like, you know, if your 3 meals at the moment are not great, just for today, eat one healthy meal. It doesn't have to be all 3 meals need to be healthy. I need to drink this much water. I need to do, you know, just for today, just have that. And that's what you say. It's like building the nervous system around it, because also if you do start to say we'll use a dance class, you want to, you don't want to go and do whatever it is you normally do with your friends on that Wednesday, and you're going to go and do the dance class. The nervous system needs to regulate to the fact that there may be people that aren't keen on you doing that. You know, your partner might be like, well, why are you going out so late on a Wednesday or whatever? You've got to allow your nervous system to match and be ready so that you aren't, it doesn't just become such a shock that you end up, you know, scaring yourself. You know, maybe we use it here with the gym. You know, we get ladies to come down and meet us first, see the place, you know, say hello. They know how to get here, you know, just things like that. Like they've driven into the car park. Okay, I know how to park. I know how to get here now. So on their first session, they've kind of done those first little things that are like,
of course.
Yeah, so that was really, I love those little ideas that you gave out of just like taking it really slow and allowing yourself to peel away. And and let's just talk a little bit on, you know, when we rise, of, you know, some of the people that fall away naturally. You know, for me, in my experience, I think that was one of the biggest, like, hardest things as when you rise and when you do change, of people that fall away. And sometimes, you know, I believe everyone we meet in our life, we meet for a reason, and
100%.
some for a long time, some for a short time. And sometimes soul contracts end, and sometimes they just end naturally. You know, they fizzle out. You may still speak to each other on Facebook once in a while, send each other a text message, but there's no bad energy there. But then sometimes there is, and, you know, it may be from the other person, because when people say she's changed, I'm always like, good, because we're supposed to. We're not supposed to say the person that we were. You know, something I actually learned recently was, you know, actually, like, I love, as you know, I love all my witchy stuff. I love going to the woods and doing all my woo-woo stuff. But not all my friends like that. Yeah, they listen to me talking about it, but some of my closest friends are actually just not into that at all. And that isn't a bad thing. Like, that's a good thing. Like, it's not, you don't have to suddenly be like, well, I want to go and dress up as a witch and go into the woods and burn sage and dance in a circle, howl at the moon, so they're not my friends anymore. No, they can still be your friends. You've 100%. Just got different friends, you know? It's, have you got anything to kind of like add with that?
Yeah. So funnily enough, my next podcast episode is going to be around changing our relationship with death. And it's not about just people dying, it's about things coming to an end. And I feel like we as a collective have such a bad relationship with ends. Like, we hate endings, right? We fucking hate when things come to an end, because obviously it comes with like really difficult emotions like pain or grief or sadness and missing something, right? But my best friend said something to me the other day that made me laugh, and I never saw it until she pointed it out. But autumn is my favorite time of year. It is my fucking favorite. It's my favorite. Love it. And she was like, "You must have a really weird relationship with death, because that's the time when things are dying. Like, that's when the natural world is dying. If you're in the northern hemisphere, anyways." And I was like, "Oh yeah." But for me, I think the idea of death, or the idea of things ending, doesn't ever feel bad, because we live in an infinite universe. So there's no such thing as an actual end of anything. It's just a new phase. So whenever I see or feel something ending, and I say this from somebody whose great grandmother literally passed away like 3 weeks ago, right? So it's very real for me. It's something I've very much moved through recently. As sad and as painful and as difficult as this whole process has been, I know that that is the symbol for something new happening, right? And that is how we have to see endings. We see them as like finite things, like, right, that's just it, stopped, it doesn't exist. Whereas if we just kind of zoom out for a little bit and see it as part of a cycle, we know that actually when something ends, that is the start of a cycle where something new is about to begin. And so changing how we see things ending. So when you do grow and you do become more of yourself and things naturally fall away, it doesn't mean that they stop being difficult or painful or uncomfortable, but it doesn't just become about something ending. It just becomes as now it's a symbol of something new is going to begin, something new is going to happen instead. So it's not something's ended, it's just this is a new part of the cycle. Like, we live in an infinite universe, like nothing ever truly ends. It's impossible. It's just ending as you know it. But whenever something ends, something is always going to begin after.
Yeah, I love that. I love that reframe of like, yeah, things can end, but you can actually look forward to it, because it means there's new change coming. We look forward to spring, don't we? Because we're looking forward to the new flowers and the lambs coming out.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all about that cyclical living, which I know you talk about
Big
a lot.
advocate for, yeah.
We, for the listeners, Drew and I text each other daily with happy whatever planet it is day. So happy Mars Day, or happy. We're Mars Day today, aren't we?
It is Mars
We're on
Day.
Mars Day.
It is Mars Day today.
Yeah, about following the planets, following the cycles, internal, external. Yeah, and understanding that, things come to an end so that better things can fall back into place. Sure. So, yeah, we're going to just ask you a couple of questions just for the listeners. So, if there's one girl out there right now that's really got low confidence, have you got like a little tip that you could give her, just to anything that she could do, a practice that she can do just to, just raise her confidence and make herself feel better?
Oh, you really are putting me on the spot today, V. No, I love this. So if you want to feel more confident, the key word there is like feeling, right? Do something that makes you feel good. Do something that makes you feel good. It doesn't have to be reasonable. Somebody else doesn't have to get it. Just do something that makes you feel good. So, for example, for me, I feel good when I dress nice. Some people might see it as shallow. I might be overdressed when I'm going places a lot of the time. I don't give a shit. That makes me feel good. When I feel good, I'm more confident. So just do something that makes you feel good.
I love that. That's a really, really good tip for sure. Yeah. And it can be anything, guys, by the way.
Anything.
It might be listening to some music and dancing around your kitchen, whatever it is, to make yourself feel good.
Whatever makes you feel good. And it's not look good, it's feel good. And I always say to people, like, I never used to believe when I wasn't confident that confidence was the most attractive trait about somebody, right? I was like, well, no, the girl that looks like, I don't know, insert whatever belief you have about what looks good in a woman, right? I used to think that was what was attractive. But you look at somebody who has confidence and you can't help but be drawn to them. you can't help but be drawn to their energy. That's because they feel
queen
good.
energy.
Like you just want more of that. So yeah, it's about the energy, not what you look like.
Yeah, that is very true and very perfect. Yeah. So just before we wrap up, let the listeners know, anything that you want to tell them about you, what you do, where to find you.
Yeah.
I did have another question to ask as well, but I will think of it while you say this.
Okay, no problem. We can come back to it. So yeah, if you can find me over on Instagram at Cordina Living, you can find my podcast Untamed and Unbothered, and I'm also opening up some spots for one-on-one clients. So if you are interested in stepping into your most powerful phase yet, then come and find me on Instagram, drop me a DM, and yeah, I'd love to see some new faces.
Yeah, and I will pop your details in the show notes as well, so everyone can find you there if they want to have a look in the show notes. That's okay. And then the last question was another one on the spot, but because I called you the wise owl, by the way. Like, she's like the owl. Sometimes I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I message her, and she's like, just come some wise. So have you got, on the spot, wise owl wisdom for anyone that's maybe going through, listen to this today and is thinking, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna step into this next version of me? Just a little, have you got anything you can?
Okay, so before I give the advice, I'm just gonna say, I know you did a channeling session with a woman called Sandrine, right? So I need to watch yours. When I did mine, she actually told me I have the elder spirit within me. Like, I am just the wise woman, because I've lived so many lifetimes. So I literally have lifetimes worth of wisdom to share. So the question was just kind of like, if you want to just move into like your next,
have you just got like
new era,
what's your fuck you kind of like bit of empowerment just to finish on?
Oh, okay, I'm gonna have to think about this one. I would say just look at your life now and think to yourself, am I happy with this just being it? And then you'll know. Just, that's it. Because if you look at your life now, if someone said to you, this is it, it's not going to get any better, there's not going to be any more change, like, this is it, this is what you're going to live out for the rest of your years, would you be happy with that?
That is a deep question. Thank you so much for asking that. And, guys, get your journal out. Maybe journal on that. This is it, because that was deep. I knew she was going to go deep. That was a deep question, if this is for sure. Let's all think about that for the rest of the day. But thank you so much for coming. I love you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's cool to leave a review. If you didn't like it, don't leave a review. If you did, please do.
Or just do both. Just like it, review it, share it, tell your friend, tell your grandma, tell your sister.
I always make the joke about, like, when people come to the gym, I'm like, if you enjoyed the session today, leave a Google review. If you didn't, please don't. So, we can't enjoy every gym session.
If you haven't got anything nice to say nothing at all.
Like on Thumper from Bambi. So listen, I reply to every message I get on Instagram. You can message me at Empowered by Victoria. If you want to find out any more about the gym, empowerher.health.fitness on Instagram. This will also be in the show notes. If you're interested in joining our 6-week body confidence program, we've got another one starting in October, and then the next one will be starting in November, but that one may be full. So I would go for October, guys, if you are listening. And I do reply. I love reviews. I love hearing about when you've listened to the podcast, and I know Ju would feel the same as well.
Yeah.
You can reach out to us. So,
also, V is a fucking powerhouse. So if you are thinking of being in her space or in her community, do it. Just do it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Ju. Yep. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
See you next week.